Welcome to the Glass or Bottle podcast with Max and Mike. I am your host, Maxine Lake. Today, Mike and I will take a deep dive into an emerging male crisis that has surfaced, according to Bill Maher and Scott Galloway. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. So let's get into it. Mike, take it away.
All right, ready to dive into some choppy waters.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
We're going to be tackling this idea of a crisis among young men today. Yeah, it's a phrase that always seems to get folks riled up.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got two very different perspectives to unpack.
Okay.
So we're going to start with a segment from Bill Maher's show, Real Time.
Okay.
Then we're going to be looking at a response video from a YouTube channel called Glass or Bottle,
Interesting.
hosted by someone who goes by,
Okay.
Should be a fascinating conversation, so buckle up.
What I find really interesting is how Maher, how he frames this whole thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't just like throw out the crisis label lightly.
Right.
You know, he backs it up with some pretty stark statistics.
Okay.
So, for example, he points out that a full third, like 1 in 3 men under 30, haven't had sex in the past year.
Oh, wow.
Which is, I mean, when you think about it, that's a pretty significant number.
Yeah, for sure.
And he also brings up the ever-widening gender gap in college graduation rates.
Right.
You know, something that's been going on for decades, obviously, but seems to be, accelerating.
Yeah, those stats definitely caught my attention as well.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet, is it?
No, not at all.
Like, Maher's trying to connect these trends to bigger societal problems.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like he's saying that this lack of success, at least as he sees it, is driving a lot of the anger and frustration we're seeing playing out in these really, disturbing ways.
Exactly. And he's arguing that, young men are increasingly detached from traditional markers of success.
Yeah.
He's like, stable careers, marriage, homeownership.
Right.
And that this detachment is leading to a sense of disaffection, and in some cases a turn toward more destructive behaviors, like violence and misogyny.
And of course, Maher being Maher, he's not exactly shy about pointing fingers.
No, he doesn't hold back.
Yeah. I mean, he's taking aim at everything from work from home culture,
Right.
Which he claims is turning men into like isolated hermits.
Yeah.
To online dating, which he's blaming for, like eroding basic social skills.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy doesn't hold back.
It's interesting how he seems to be like drawing a line between like the digital world and this perceived decline in men's ability to navigate the real world. So, he's suggesting that the structure and the social interaction of a traditional office environment are crucial for young men to develop, professionally and personally.
Yeah.
And then he's pretty critical of online dating.
Yeah.
He's arguing it's creating this like generation of men who are unable to form genuine connections because they're so used to like superficiality and the instant gratification of the online world.
Of the online world, yeah.
Exactly.
But then we have M from Glass or Bottle offering a very different take.
Yes.
While she agrees that, men are struggling to connect,
Yeah.
she digs a little deeper, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. She adds a layer of nuance by suggesting that men are struggling to connect not just with women, but with like each other as well. It's like she's implying that there's a lack of emotional intimacy and vulnerability in male friendships.
Yeah.
Maybe stemming from these like traditional expectations of masculinity that discourage men from expressing their emotions openly.
That's a point that really resonated with me, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we all heard that old saying, boys don't cry?
Right. Exactly.
It makes you wonder if that kind of like ingrained stoicism is actually hurting men more than it's helping them.
Yeah, I think so.
And what role does that play in this crisis, if you even want to call it that?
Right, exactly. And M also challenges Maher's pretty traditional view of work, She suggests that maybe we need to like rethink what work even means in the 21st century.
Right.
This idea that men are like inherently wired for physical labor and that anything less is somehow a failure just doesn't seem to hold up anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The world has changed.
Right.
And maybe our definition of success and fulfillment needs to change with it.
I think that's a great point.
Right.
And this is where things get like really interesting to me.
Yes.
She goes on to criticize what she sees as a lack of intergenerational mentorship among men. She actually calls out older men for withholding information and support from younger generations, which is a pretty bold statement.
It is, yeah. And it makes you wonder if there's like a breakdown in those traditional support systems that used to like guide young men. You know, if they're not getting that guidance and wisdom from older generations, maybe they are turning to, less healthy sources of information and validation.
Like, say, the internet.
Exactly.
Which, ironically, brings us back to Maher's point about the dangers of the digital world.
Right. It's like we've come full circle.
Yeah.
You know, the digital world might be isolating men.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the few places where they feel comfortable seeking, connection.
Connection.
Even if it's often superficial.
Yeah. And we can't talk about connection without talking about dating, can we?
No, we can't.
Flips the script on Maher's critique of online dating.
Okay.
By offering, like, a woman's perspective. She argues that the way men approach dating online has been negatively impacted by the platforms themselves.
Okay.
So in a way, it's making it harder for them to actually connect with women in a meaningful way.
It's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing on how online dating might be hindering, men's social skills, as Maher does, she's highlighting how these platforms might be shaping women's expectations and behavior as well.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-way street.
Right. It's not just a one-way street.
Exactly.
And she also brings up a point that's it's hard to ignore.
Yeah.
Especially in light of this conversation about men and crisis. She talks about, the very real dangers that women face.
Right.
Linking them to this, to this crisis among men.
Yeah.
She even goes so far as to advise women to prioritize their own safety. Which is a pretty sobering reminder that these societal trends have real-world consequences.
It definitely adds a layer of complexity to the discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're not just talking about, like, abstract concepts here. We're talking about, the safety and well-being of real people.
Of real people, exactly.
Yeah. And it underscores the fact that this is not just a, quote, men's issue or a women's issue. It's a societal issue.
A societal issue, yeah.
Societal issue, yeah.
It affects us all.
Absolutely. So we've got these two very different yet strangely interconnected perspectives on this whole idea of, a crisis among men. What stands out to you as we kind of start to connect the threads of this conversation?
Well, I think the most striking overlap is this shared concern about men's ability to connect.
Yeah.
Both Maher and M are essentially saying that, something's amiss.
Okay.
Whether it's a lack of connection with women, with other men, with, meaningful work, or even with themselves.
Yeah.
There seems to be a sense that men are struggling.
Okay.
To find their place in a world that's, rapidly changing.
That's a great point. And while Maher is focusing more on the potential societal consequences of this disconnect, really dives into the personal impact.
On both men and women. It's a fascinating contrast, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that both of these perspectives are generalizations.
Right.
Individual experiences will vary widely.
Of course.
There's no one-size-fits-all explanation for what's going on.
Right. We're dealing with incredibly complex issues here.
Yeah.
Gender roles, societal expectations, the evolving nature of work and relationships. I mean, it's a lot to untangle.
It really is.
But I think the fact that we're even having this conversation is a step in the right direction.
I agree. And as we move forward, I think the key is to approach this topic with, nuance and empathy.
Yeah.
We need to listen to, diverse voices, challenge our own assumptions, and be willing to, like, grapple with the complexities of the issue.
Exactly. So with that in mind, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And explore some of the potential solutions that both Maher and M hinted at.
Okay.
Because as we all know, simply identifying a problem isn't enough.
Right.
We need to start thinking about how to address it in a way that, benefits everyone.
That's a great point.
Right. So I think that's a great place to pick up after a quick break.
Well, hello there, fam. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching Glass or Bottle podcast with Max and Mike. Those are my AI friends that are going to put a different spin on some of the videos that I do. I would like it if you guys would like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the notification button if you would like more content like this from me. Also, if you want to leave a comment below, what you think of the shows. Tell me what you feel. I'm not going to get offended. You know why I'm not going to get offended? Because I'm just going to delete it if I don't like it. But that's just me, But otherwise, like I always say, if it don't apply, let it fly. If it hit home, leave it alone. With all that being said, let's get back to Max and Mike and see what else they got to say about this. See you next time on Glass of Bottom.
Good. As we delve deeper into this conversation, I keep coming back to M's point about redefining work.
Yeah.
It feels particularly relevant, especially when you consider how much of Maher's argument rests on those traditional ideas about success.
It's like Maher's stuck in this time warp.
Right.
Where a man's worth is measured by, his paycheck.
Right.
And his ability to provide.
Yeah.
But M is pushing us to consider a broader perspective.
Yeah.
One that acknowledges, the changing landscape of work.
Exactly.
And the diverse ways that people find meaning and purpose.
Precisely. I mean, we're living in a gig economy, a knowledge economy.
Yeah.
A world where remote work and entrepreneurship are, increasingly common. The old metrics of success just don't fit anymore.
Right.
And perhaps this disconnect is contributing to that sense of crisis that Maher is highlighting.
It's like the old roadmap is leading to a dead end.
Yeah.
And we haven't quite figured out how to draw a new one yet.
Right.
But I think both Maher and M, in their own ways, are urging us to start that process of renavigation.
Absolutely. And that brings us to what I find to be one of the most compelling threads in this entire conversation.
Right.
The question of mentorship was pretty direct in her criticism of older men for not stepping up to the plate.
Right.
It's a bold claim, but, is there some truth to it? Are we seeing a breakdown in these, traditional intergenerational support systems?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a simple answer.
Right.
But I do think it raises some important points about the ways in which men connect with each other.
Yeah.
Or perhaps fail to connect.
Exactly. Are we creating spaces where men can be vulnerable, share their struggles, and learn from each other's experiences?
Right.
Are we modeling healthy masculinity for younger generations? These are the kinds of questions we need to be asking ourselves if we want to move beyond simply diagnosing the problem.
And speaking of modeling healthy masculinity, I
Yes.
think it's worth noting that both Maher and M seem to agree
Yeah.
that traditional ideas about manhood might be part of the problem.
Absolutely. The stoicism, the emphasis on competition and dominance,
Right.
the reluctance to express emotions.
Right.
These are all traits that have been traditionally associated with masculinity,
Yeah.
but they can also be incredibly isolating
Right.
and harmful.
It's like we're trapped in this paradox.
Right.
We tell men to man up and hide their feelings,
Mm-hmm.
but then we wonder why they're struggling to connect and find fulfillment.
Right.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And that's where I think the conversation needs to shift.
Yeah.
It's not about abandoning masculinity altogether.
Right.
It's about redefining it,
Okay.
expanding it, making it more inclusive and supportive.
Right.
It's about creating a version of manhood that embraces vulnerability, empathy, and connection.
So how do we do that? How do we move beyond these outdated and often harmful stereotypes?
Well, I think it starts with education.
Okay.
We need to challenge those traditional narratives about masculinity
Right.
and offer alternative models for what it means to be a man in the 21st century.
Right.
And this education needs to start early
Okay.
in homes, in schools, and in communities.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
We need to be having these conversations with young boys,
Yes.
teaching them that it's okay to express their emotions, to ask for help, to be vulnerable.
Right.
And we need to be showing them, examples of healthy masculinity in action.
Exactly. And it's not just about boys.
Right.
We need to be talking to girls as well. helping them understand that masculinity can be expressed in healthy and diverse ways.
Right.
You know, it's about breaking down these rigid gender stereotypes that limit us all.
It's about creating a culture where everyone, regardless of gender, feels, valued, respected, and empowered to be their authentic selves.
Right.
But let's be realistic.
Yeah.
This kind of cultural shift doesn't happen overnight.
It's a long game, for sure. But there are, concrete steps we can take in the meantime.
Okay.
For example, we need to make sure men have access to the resources and support they need.
That's a great point. We need to be advocating for, better mental health services.
Yes.
For programs that promote healthy relationships.
Right.
For workplaces that value, work-life balance.
Yeah.
And emotional well-being.
Exactly. And we need to be addressing the systemic issues that contribute to this sense of crisis. So the gender pay gap, the lack of affordable childcare, the pressure on men to be the sole breadwinners. These are all factors that play a role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't just focus on individual solutions.
Right.
We need to be working towards, systemic change if we want to create a truly equitable and supportive society for everyone.
It's a multifaceted challenge, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal is simply the willingness to talk about it, to listen to each other, and to work together towards solutions.
As we're talking, I'm reminded of something Em said in her video.
Okay.
She argued that women need to prioritize their own safety, especially in light of this perceived crisis among men.
Right.
It's a stark reminder that these issues have, real-world consequences.
It does add a layer of urgency to the conversation, doesn't it? And it highlights the interconnectedness of these issues.
Yeah.
We can't address the challenges facing men without also considering the impact on women and vice versa.
It's like this tangled web.
Yeah.
But instead of getting caught in the threads,
Right.
we need to find a way to, unravel it, to understand the complexities, and work towards a more just and equitable future for everyone.
And that brings us back to that thought-provoking question we posed earlier.
Yeah.
If there is a crisis among men, how do we move beyond simply identifying the problem and work towards solutions that benefit everyone?
It's a question that requires us to think critically, to challenge assumptions, and to be willing to step outside of our, comfort zones.
Absolutely. And perhaps most importantly, it requires us to listen, to empathize, and to recognize that we're all in this together.
I think those are some incredibly powerful words to end on. It's easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom when we talk about these big societal issues.
Right.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm actually feeling a sense of hope.
Okay.
However cautious it might be.
I understand that. Yeah, it can feel overwhelming at times to confront these deeply ingrained patterns and systems.
Right.
But what I find encouraging is just the fact that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
The more we talk about it, the more we challenge these, outdated norms, the more we create space for new and healthier models of masculinity to emerge.
I think what's been most illuminating for me is how this conversation has kind of transcended.
Yeah.
That men versus women binary.
Right.
That often dominates these discussions.
Absolutely.
Both Maher and M, despite their differences, are ultimately pointing to a need for a more human-centered approach.
I agree.
One that prioritizes connection, empathy, and well-being for everyone.
It's about recognizing that the well-being of men and women is intrinsically linked.
Yeah.
When one group struggles, the other is inevitably affected.
Right.
So creating a more equitable and supportive society benefits everyone in the long run.
So as we conclude this deep dive, I keep coming back to this question.
Okay.
What can we each do as individuals to contribute to this shift?
Yeah.
Because it feels like we've identified some major systemic issues.
Right.
But where do we even begin to tackle them?
It's a great question. And I think it starts with self-reflection.
Okay.
We need to examine our own biases, the ways in which we might be perpetuating harmful stereotypes, even unconsciously.
Yeah.
How do we talk about men and boys in our lives?
Right.
How do we react to their emotions? Are we modeling healthy communication and vulnerability?
That's such a powerful point. It's so easy to just point fingers at society.
Right.
Or the system.
Right.
But real change starts with each of us.
Exactly.
Taking responsibility for our own actions and beliefs.
Absolutely. And beyond that individual reflection, we need to be willing to challenge those harmful narratives when we encounter them.
Right.
So if you hear someone making a sexist joke, speak up. If you see someone being bullied or marginalized, intervene.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to use your voice to advocate for a more inclusive and equitable world.
And I think it's also about supporting the men and boys in our lives in meaningful ways.
Yeah.
You know, are we creating space for them to talk about their struggles?
Yeah.
Are we listening without judgment?
Right.
Are we encouraging them to seek help when they need it?
Yeah.
Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just, be there for each other.
I couldn't agree more. It's about fostering those genuine connections that both, Maher and M highlighted as being so crucial to well-being.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not about having all the answers.
Right.
Or, fixing someone else's problems. It's about showing up with empathy and compassion.
And while individual actions are essential, we can't forget about the bigger picture.
Right.
We need to be advocating for systemic changes that address the root causes of these issues.
That's right. Whether it's pushing for policies that promote gender equality, supporting organizations that work to, combat violence against women, or simply voting for candidates who prioritize these issues, we all have a role to play in shaping a more just and equitable future.
That's, I think, a perfect note to end on. It's a call to action for all of us.
I agree.
Let's move beyond the hand-wringing and the blame game.
Yes.
And start working towards solutions.
Yeah.
Both individually and collectively.
The future of masculinity, and indeed the future of our society as a whole, depends on it.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these ideas.
Yeah.
And hopefully spark some conversations of your own.
I hope so.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep evolving.